Hey guys, and welcome to podcast episode number one right now. So, my name is Pran. For those of you that don't know me, most of you would have found me through the purchase of my book, or maybe you have joined my email newsletter, or maybe you have seen a few of my social media posts, right? So, I've decided to create this podcast series to answer a bunch of your guys' questions, to break down myths, and just to give you more weight loss tips and stuff like that in a different format other than a book, right? Because I can discuss a lot more via a podcast such as this one. Okay, so every week I'm going to be breaking down different topics um, and different myths about weight loss that you probably believe to be true that are not true, right? So, starting off today, we want to talk about the importance of muscle. Now, if you bought my book and you've read my book, you probably know how much I emphasize the importance of muscle. And everything I teach in there really does emphasize the importance of muscle. Now, muscle in terms of weight loss is going to be very, very important because uh, the more muscle you have on your body, the higher your metabolic rate is going to be. And the higher your metabolic rate is going to be, is typically going to be the more fat you are going to burn and the more food you can eat. Okay. So if we were to take two people, person A and person B, who are exactly the same, let's say everything about them is the same, their height, their weight, their profession, they're the same weight, and everything like that is the same. The only difference is that person A has double the amount of muscle on his body than person B. Okay. So let's say they both wanted to lose 10 kgs. That was their goal. Now, starting off, they both the same weight. Typically, what would happen is person A would lose that amount of weight within half the time or so as person B due to having more muscle. Okay. So in terms of losing weight, you can see how that has such a impact. A person A will also be able to eat a lot more food without it resulting in fat gain. Okay, because muscle is an expensive material, guys. So the body needs to burn calories in order to maintain the muscle, right? So if you don't have that muscle, well, that those calories are most likely going to end up as fat instead of being used to build muscle. Okay. Now, as you age as well, muscle is going to be very important because, as you get older, you're going to have a lot of joint problems, and your muscles and body parts are probably going to get achy, and your mobility is definitely going to decrease. So, having a good amount of muscle before you get into your older years is going to be very, very beneficial, okay, and prevent a lot of these issues. Now, the other day I was scrolling and I came across a topic or a article that said 11 common muscle building myths. Okay, so I went through this and I found it particularly interesting because I'm sure a lot of you believe some of these to be true when they are not true at all, right? So as we can see, something like weight loss and stuff like that has gone through years and years of, different information, people selling stuff and really wanting you to believe this diet works and that diet works and all these different things work, just to sell their products, right? That's how this has led to the rise of things like keto and CrossFit, and all these things have just come up as ways to lose weight. But ultimately, we want to look at what is the truth and what is the real way to lose weight, right? So let us now break down this article of 11 common muscle building myths. This is on insider.com if you want to read it. But let's go ahead and break down these myths. Okay, so myth number one is if unused, muscle tissue will turn into fat. Okay, so now I've heard this a lot, and I've heard this from relatives and people who are really have no clue really about fitness and weight loss and stuff like that, but they definitely believe that muscle will turn into fat. Okay, or um, that muscle tissue will convert into fat. And this is just not true at all, guys. Muscle is a different material altogether, and fat is a different material altogether. So, muscle tissue will definitely not turn into fat if muscle tissue is unused. Say you've gone to the gym and you've built a considerable amount of muscle, and now you decide that you don't want to go to the gym anymore, or something comes in the way and you don't end up going to the gym anymore. that muscle will just deteriorate. You lose a lot of that muscle mass, but it will not turn into fat. Okay. That's like saying that petrol will turn into diesel. They're completely different elements, guys. So it is not possible at all. Okay. Right, let's jump out into the second one. Myth number two: you build more muscle if you train in the morning. Okay. Now, this is obviously again not true, but there's been again a lot of hype about morning workouts being more effective. This is clearly not true. Whichever time of day you go and get your training in or your exercise in, it's going to have the same effect as long as you do it over a 24-hour period, right? And stay consistent with it. So whether you go in the morning or the night, it does not matter what time you train. Now, for some people, training in the morning will be more effective because they feel better, they feel more fresh, and they prefer that. For other people, training in the night is more practical because they have work and stuff like that. So it is definitely not anything to worry about, and it's definitely not true that you will build more muscle if you train first thing in the morning. Alrighty, we now move into myth number three: you should be stretching before training muscles. Okay. Now, when it comes to stretching, um, there's a lot of belief that stretching increases your muscle mass, and there have been some studies that have shown some of this to be true, but it is inconclusive, right? So that means that there's not enough information. One or two studies say this, but it is not conclusive information. Okay. Now, as a personal trainer and weight loss coach, I do recommend that you stretch before you start your training exercise and stuff like that. And in fact, even make stretching a daily part of your routine, just because over time, your muscles do tend to tighten up, and you will have less mobility and range of motion if you do not stretch them. Myth number four: muscle weighs more than fat. Now, uh, people believe that if you had to put a pound of muscle, you know, a pound of muscle on a scale and a pound of fat, that your muscle would weigh more. It's obviously not true at all. They both weigh the same. A pound of muscle and a pound of fat are going to obviously be a pound. What is going to be the difference is going to be visual difference, right? So your pound of fat is going to look a lot more fluffier, and it's going to look like a baked cake, right? Whereas your pound of muscle is probably going to look more like a chicken breast, right? It's going to be much more leaner. It's going to be smaller, and it's going to be much more dense, which probably leads to the why people think that it's going to be heavier. Um, but the visual difference is going to be the main one on this, right? Myth number five: lifting weights makes women bulky. And this is the first one that I talked about. As I said, lifting weights takes and a lot of dedication, and it takes many, many years and possibly even steroids to look as bulky as you might think you will. You can train for 5, 10 years pretty hard, and you will not look, like a bulked up steroid woman, which is what most people, women think they'll look like. Okay. Myth number six: you need to lift heavy weights to build muscle. This is obviously not true. What needs to happen for muscle to be built is that there needs to be you need to put the muscle under progressive overload. Okay, so this could be done with heavier weights. Heavier weights does build muscle, but it's not the only way to build muscle, right? Another way could be that if you are limited to the amount of weights you have, you could increase the amounts of reps or increase the time under tension. So you could just take a lot longer to do that particular rep and increase the time under tension, which would also lead to muscle gain. Okay. But number seven: you should eat protein immediately after a workout. Now, again, this is not true. There's something called a window, which people say that within after your training, you want to have your protein within that. Again, I would say this is not true. As long as within the day you get in your overall protein intake, you should be absolutely fine. Okay. But number eight: soreness is a sign you're getting stronger. Now, this is kind of a tricky one because there's two kinds of soreness. There's a soreness which is bad, like your joint pains and stuff like that, which is not very fun. Then there's a kind of soreness you get from, after a tense workout, your legs are a bit tired and stuff like that. So it depends which type of soreness we're talking about here. Um, but if you're feeling the bad kind of soreness, then it is probably um, an indication that you're doing your exercises, you're either overtraining or you are doing the motion of the exercise in a wrong way. Okay, so it could be that maybe your feet are in a different position that shouldn't be when you're squatting or something like that, and that could lead to knee pain and stuff like that. Now there's the soreness where you train for a while, right? Say many of us who've had leg day, we know this, and 2 days later your legs are pretty sore. That kind of soreness uh, does in fact mean that you've trained pretty good and that you've put the muscle under tension and that you've probably caused some tears within the muscle, which is what leads to muscle growth. Okay. Myth number 9, you need to confuse your muscles to improve your workouts. Now, people who have trained for quite a bit of time, they've probably, again, heard that, oh, you need to confuse the muscles. So if you do a particular routine um, for a long period of time, you need to change it up. Now, this is true in some way, but for the most part, it doesn't help with building muscle. What this does is it gets rid of the monotony of your old cycle, right? So you feel refreshed with a different kind of cycle, but there's no conclusive evidence to show that confusing your muscles and changing your workout routines will lead to increased muscle mass. Myth number 10, you should always do 8 to 12 repetitions. So when you're training, most people do between 8 to 12 repetitions. Say you're doing bicep curls, say you're doing squats or something like that. It's believed that you should do 8 to 12. Now, this is going to be different depending on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to build muscle, if you're trying to working for cardiovascular endurance, hypertrophy, it all depends. Okay, but typically you want to look anywhere between 6 to 15. The main thing you want to do when building muscle is to make sure that you are feeling pretty tired at the end of your rep. So if you're to take a particular weight and by the time you get to number 11, rep number 11 and 12, and you can't lift anymore, then that's a good sign that you are doing great. Okay, if you want to go heavier and you can't do more than 5 or 6, that's also fine. But as long as by the last two reps you are depleted, that should be fine. You don't want to have too much excess energy where you're doing 8 to 12 reps and at the end of your reps you're still feeling fresh. Okay, that means that you really haven't done much. But number 11, your workouts need to be long and effective. Long to be effective. Definitely not. We've had clients who have a particularly strenuous routine with their work schedules and stuff like that, and they can only afford 30 minutes a day to work out. Again, as I said, your weight loss, most of it is going to come through your diet. Okay, so your workouts are secondary compared to your diet. If you can create that caloric deficit through your diet, well, then your workout doesn't need to be that crazy. You can even skip on workouts most of the days. Okay, and that is the final myth we are looking at today, guys. So that's 11 common muscle myths broken down for you. Now, I will be creating episodes like this, probably 1 or 2 every week, and continue to upload them. So subscribe to this podcast. Is going to be on YouTube and it's going to be on Spotify podcast. So whenever a new episode is released, you will be notified. And we will continue the podcast from there. So thank you so much for having a listen today, guys, and I will see you in the next one.